Right now on Tech Radio, I.O. Off to work we go.
Hi, I'm Artemis. I am a computer-generated AI voice, and you're listening to Tech Radio.
Every week online and on air with RT Radio, we bring you the latest in tech from Ireland and across the world. This is episode 1070, looking back at the 7 biggest stories of the week, including big developments at both Google I.O. and Microsoft's Build conferences this week. Also, we have a new high for Bitcoin and a new low for print journalism. Plus, we'll be talking about the problems faced by the EU's AI Act with our guest Barry Scannell from William Fry. Let's get to it.
From TechCentral.ie, this is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
I'm Dusty. Joining me as always, the editor-in-chief, the man at the top of the tech towers at Tech Central, Niall Kitson. Google I.O. leading us out this week. A lot going on there, all AI. What caught your attention?
Yeah, Sundar Pichai came up on stage and said, it's Gemini season. I said, what do you mean Gemini season? It's like, it's all you do now. Okay, I think there was things that both of us liked. We probably both liked the same things, to be honest. Top of my list, anyway, is Google Beam. I really like their new video calling service.
It is quite the thing. The only thing is, it's like Google Meet, okay? But you need to buy a booth for it because it's 3D and it really does give the impression that the person you're talking to is sitting in front of you.
And this is one of the problems of user experience that maybe people found during COVID was the idea of Zoom fatigue, that you just got kind of these unnatural meetings, felt unnatural, kind of draining. Maybe this is a good way of addressing that problem, of creating meetings that feel more personalized. Are we going to see that same level of fatigue or boredom or whatever?
I think we will, yeah. I think they would just get. I think people would just get used to it. And do you know what? It was great for a while during and after COVID because people got used to video calls and they would treat them like a meeting. All right.
Yeah.
Whereas now I've seen in the last 18 months, particularly among younger people that I'll be working with, is a tendency to go, no, I can't make it, or they just don't show up for a meeting, for a video meeting.
Interesting. Okay.
And it's kind of, it's just on because the importance of it has gone down. And it's like, I'll skip that. Do you know what I mean? Or something's come up. We'll do that next week. Do you know what I mean? Like, whereas kind of now I'm going way, way back where people would actually call around to one another, would have to see people face to face and stuff like that. That's a whole different level. So I think that kind of Google Meet video meeting is losing its importance. I think Google Beam will bring up the importance again because you will need a special 3D video booth in order to do it. So it will be a thing. But do you know what I think about when I think about 3D Beam and sitting in this thing and looking across the bench at a 3D version of somebody who's somebody else? It's like Forbidden Planet. That's what it reminds me of. One of the classic early sci-fi movies.
You love this movie.
And but it feels like Google Beam is looking into the future. If you were to come back to Earth in 100 years' time, this would be in every home.
Okay.
Some version of it will be in every home. And I think at that stage, you'll have people wandering around going, for God's sake, they just didn't bother showing up to the Beam meeting.
Yeah.
Or they cancelled at the last minute.
It reminds me of, vaguely, but I think this is hilarious. There was an episode of Deep Space Nine where a new communication system had been installed into the Defiant. And the idea was that it was meant to be a holographic representation of who you were talking to, right?
Yeah.
But the thing was, either the CGI wasn't there. Yeah, the CGI clearly wasn't there to make it viable. So you just had the actor standing there. And it's clearly just the guy. He's casting a shadow and everything. And he's talking about, I don't think I'll get used to this holographic system.
I know, but that's the whole thing with science fiction movies, and it's part of the charm and how they look. I love looking at it. You see it popping up on videos all the time, like, something from like Tomorrow's World in the 70s about how we'll be living in the year 2000. And when you look at it, it's quite charming. Anyway, all the things that were going on with Google I.O. What else got your attention?
Yeah, okay. Something that was mentioned, which got my attention, because working in the media industry, we're all about eyeballs. You know, we want people to actually come visit our sites, to read our content, all that kind of thing. And we've spent years getting SEO right, in inverted commas, just finding best way to deliver high quality content to people that will actually want to read it on our site. Yeah. Now, because we have AI overviews, we have now found out, thank you, Google, that our search clicks across the world, search clicks are down 30%, because people are typing in their problem, their whatever. And in times gone past, they would see the start of an answer on a website, so they click through and get the full thing. But now they just get the full summary in front of them, so they don't need to click through to anything. So
because AI has already done an overview, there's no need to click any link because you've got your answer. Yep. That's it. That is bad news, isn't it? Well, for the people who, because they're supplying the information essentially, aren't they?
For free.
I saw an article and I knew I should have included it, and they were talking about AI and Google specifically, and they were calling it out and out theft. Okay. And I think it was one of the media companies or the news companies or something like that, because they said in the past, yes, you would have a news story and yes, it would be listed by Google and people would click on it and then they'd come through to our website in order to get the content and they'd see our ads and it kind of all worked out to a certain extent. Now, AI is summarizing it and just putting the answer there at the top of the page. They don't even come through to the website of the person who generated that answer. And they said, because Google are taking it for free without any payment and using it for their own thing, he said that is theft. It's the same as walking into my house, taking a leather coat and walking out so you can use it yourself. I think they have a point.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that. Of course, it's in my interests to say so. But anyway, so other things that grab my attention. Of course, we've been talking about agentic AI for a year and a half.
Wow. Yeah. We've been waiting for agentic to come into the common use, and it seems to be now. And
Google seems to have done it. I mean, the example that they used was looking for an apartment. And they were able to input certain parameters into their bot, who was able to return some search results. So they were looking for, the example given was an apartment in Austin, in Texas. Okay. And just input, the following, I need to live near, I want 1 bedroom, this is my budget, all these kind of things. And it'll bring you a result. Now, not, I mean, you could go onto one site and that makes sense and put in those same parameters. But the agentic element is collating results from multiple sites and going, here you go. That's the selling point.
And I wonder again, is that, no, I suppose maybe that's not theft, because you're being given the choice of, and you click on the ones that you like. But it's the same thing from a consumer's point of view. It's fantastic. I have to say, I love the fact that, because one of the things that has really been annoying me about Google lately is that you do a Google search for something and they do present you with 20 or 30 websites, all with varying answers. And some of them not even an answer or not even related or whatever, So from a user's point of view, to be able to type that in and to see an AI summary of what it thinks, very interesting. And I think that agentic thing is very good, because you can say, I want an apartment, but that's very good. And also the other thing that they did with Chrome that impressed me was that with the AI built in, it's able to answer a question based on all of the open tabs that you have. So there are various AIs at the moment, so that if you have a tab open and you're looking at a particular story, you can say, summarize this story or give me this in bullet points, or you can ask it a question about that particular page. When they roll this out in Chrome, when you ask the AI a question, it will look at all of the open tabs. So if you've got a news story, as I often do, and you've got 4 or 5 different company tabs open of various things, I can now ask the AI and I will look at all of them. I think that's very good. So that impressed me. Go on.
One last thing, I suppose, is the level of personalization they were talking about.
Gmail. I was about to say the Gmail. Go on.
Well, I mean, in the same way that large language models have been training themselves on God knows what, Google would like to make theirs a little better for you by using all the stuff that you've been inputting into their various services. They want to check your email. They want to check your drive. They want to make things that sound like you.
Yeah. Don't like that. I like the thought of it. It's like, great, the automated response, and it's been around for a while, and you can have little snippets and stuff like that in your email or templates or whatever, and it would be kind of great. But the problem is personalized means that it's unique, which means that it's different every time. And as you say, they want to dive into previous emails that you've done into your drive. I don't want an AI in my stuff. Do you know what I mean? I already don't even like the fact that I've got documents on Google.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the fact that they're doing that. Anyway, all of this sounds amazing, but I have a story from yesterday that kind of just puts it all into the halfpenny place, and you kind of go, well, why bother, okay? I was using Google yesterday. Gemini AI was there. I had a document. I said, I wonder how long this is going to take somebody to read, because I was wanted to put it into an email and say, I've attached da-da-da-da. It's a 10-minute read, something like that. It's not an unusual thing. Gemini couldn't do it. Didn't even try. It just went, no, I'm unable to help with that request. And I went, okay, count the words in this document and divide by 3, taking 3 words per second, and then tell me how many seconds it'll take. No, I'm unable to help. It's like, what?
Okay.
So we're talking about all of these fantastic things. Exactly. Google Beam and Meet. Oh, there's another thing with Google Meet. I had it in my Beam notes. Google Meet that we do use all day, every day at the moment. They did a great demonstration of live translation between languages. So it was an English speaking person talking to a Spanish speaking person, and there was live translation between the pair of them. Yeah, it was amazing. Only Spanish for now, but they will be rolling it out into other languages as we go along. And you know what? In America, I suppose, maybe because Spanish is so prevalent over there. I think more so in Europe, that's going to be a game changer to a certain extent. Because you've got
all these German, new wonderful additions, they ain't going to come for free.
Well, no, I had a look at the pricing for it, and AI Pro, as suspected, I mean, it's $20 a month, and that seems to be kind of, the norm. But if you want AI Ultra, the one with all the bells and the whistles and the everything, it's going to set you back $249 per month.
How's about I just go to the library and learn how to get better at stuff?
Well, maybe. But you know what? That I was thinking about that price, and I kind of went, that's geared at corporates, okay?
Yeah.
Because it's $3,000 a year. And for a big corporate, that's kind of fine. But where it gets really expensive is that'll be per user. So if you've got $3,000 a year and you've got 100 employees that need to use it, well, then there's 300,000. So anyway, let's get on to the other big conference of the week, and that was Microsoft Build. Tell me everything.
And you know what? I mean, where Google did, I mean, these are both developer conferences, but I felt Google was quite fresh and kind of consumer friendly. If you wanted to watch it, you could follow it. Build definitely felt like one for the purists. As they say in sports, if something is a bit boring but technically pretty good. So that's pretty much it. I mean, at the start, there were protests against Satya Nadella. Apparently, depending on who you ask, it was either directly pro-Palestine or it was anti the use of Microsoft Azure by the Israeli military.
So connected one way or the other.
Connected one way or the other. One person definitely got fired. Over that. But anyway, they also lent into Agentic Web. They really wanted to talk about that. That was their sort of their headline for their keynote. So Satya Nadella was talking about how AI can become the UI of AI.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right? So he was talking about having chat, mail, search, notebook, create, all of that managed within Copilot.
Okay.
So kind of a convenience thing, I guess. And he also was talking about something that was pretty interesting, and a version of what we were talking about with Google, the way that it was training your sort of personalizing of your personal data. Microsoft is looking to do the same, only with internal corporate data, right? So it's adding to, say you create a little an agent, and you could go, okay, how did X product timeline work for us in year 2012? And it will be able to pull in that sort of corporate data and tell you, right? So it's very much, it gives you the impression that it's for big business. That's fine. That was interesting. Somehow, Microsoft has decided it's a good idea to work with Grok, which is Elon Musk's Sarky AI. So, I mean, Microsoft is working with a load of different AIs. There's LeChat is in there. OpenAI, of course, is in there because they're an investor in ChatGPT. But they've added Grok to their slate of them. Which, as I said, there's a couple there. So maybe it was an inevitable decision. One last thing that I was really impressed by was digital twinning. In particular, here's our Foxconn factory in China. This is exactly what it looks like. We can send instructions to it. We can do whatever we want. I thought that was really interesting. And, we talked about digital twins and their uses in over the last few weeks. So to see this done on an industrial scale is still pretty impressive.
Let's get on to other stories this week. And I suppose the tail end of the week is all about Bitcoin, because it's hit a new record high. As we're recording on Thursday, it has hit a new record high of $111,000 first thing this morning, like 7 a.m. So somebody got up at 7 a.m. to check the value. $111,000 in euro, that's 98,000 euro.
Wow.
So I think for us, this side of the Atlantic, I think when it hits 100,000 euro, that's going to be a bit of a milestone, this side.
Well, I mean, there's talk of the value of Bitcoin as it is right now doubling by the end of the year. I don't know what would have to happen for that to come to pass. I mean, let's look at what's happening in America at the moment. I think what Trump is doing with crypto, even if it is just with his own meme coin, has really pushed it further into the public consciousness. Yeah. I mean, I'm seeing ads for Bunk on TV now, which is a crypto exchange. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, that, and there's the where it just work away. There's a couple of things, crypto bros.
There's a couple of things happening in regulation in the States. There's the Genius Act, which is focusing really on stable coins, and the idea is to make them more stable, so that anybody who is issuing a stable coin will have to abide by certain rules, so that they are able to actually back it if it's tied to the US dollar, and they can't try and fake that it's the US dollar or that it's something to do with the US government. It's all that kind of stuff anyway, but it's just bringing some rules to crypto. And then the same with there's the Blockchain Regulatory Uncertainty Act. Hey! BRCA, I think they're calling it. Anyway, that has made some moves this week, and the big thing about that is that it deals with people who have custody of. So, like, say Coinbase, all right, will have custody of your coin if you decide to keep it with them, all right.
Right.
And because of that, Coinbase have to know certain things about you, so they'd have to have your passport and your real name and your bank details, so you can be tracked by the revenue people, not just in the States. But in Europe and around the world, and they all share their information, all right? It's all called Know Your Customer, okay? So that there was a problem, though, with that, with people who say the miners who transfer Bitcoin from one account to another, okay? They're a wee bit different because they don't actually take custody of your money. They only just kind of literally go on the ledger and say, blah, 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 blah account is moving X number to blah, 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 blah account. And that's it. All right. They don't actually control the user's money at any time, but there's a certain amount of uncertainty in there at the moment where they could be classed as somebody who is a custodian of the cash or Bitcoin at a certain time. And because of that, they may be asked, have you done all the know your customer information? And if you haven't, you'll be fined a whole load of money. And they'll be going, well, it's not our place to do it. Uncertainty. And the one thing that the market hates is uncertainty. So that regulation is going to take some uncertainty out of the market. The Genius Act is going to take some uncertainty out of the market. The fact that Trump and the Republicans in general are kind of going, okay, grand, well, crypto is a thing, so we're going to work with it. That is also bringing some positivity and certainty to the market. And because of that, all of the people who are into crypto up until now, or until a couple of years ago, it very much started with private people. It was just a thing. It was a nerdy thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it went from nerdy thing to kind of like, well, people who are interested in technology, and then it got into other people who saw whatever. But now it's very much the domain of ETFs and institutional and corporate investors. And they're going in and they're kind of looking at it, they're going, okay, let's buy $100 million worth. Yeah. Huge amounts of money, and that does affect the market. And if they buy at $100 million today and then the value goes up tomorrow and they sell, they make huge amounts of money. Huge amounts of money. Do you know what I mean? So they can play with it, and that's the way they look at it. And then there's other institutional investors who'll say, okay, this might sound ridiculous, okay, but I bet you there's some institutional investors who go, okay, we're going to take a punt on this and we're going to put in, say, 10 million, and we're just going to leave it there for 99 years.
Right.
Because that's what institutional investors do. And in 99 years' time, it could be worth billions. Who knows? All right. Then I think the other reason why Bitcoin is doing well is that the market in general is down. So they're looking for other things to invest in. I think Moody's downgraded the US from a AAA. Was it last week, I think? Yeah. So that's having a little bit of a negative effect on the dollar. So it's interesting to see that the stock market is down, but Bitcoin is up, which is a little unusual because recently they've both kind of been following each other. So, but anyway, they're the kind of, that's just some of the kind of things that are going on in the world that is keeping the price of Bitcoin today. You've said it yourself. There's talk that it could be twice the value by the end of the year. There's other people who are saying it could go to $1 million. I'm saying, remember that it could be worth, it could be worth whatever, 80 grand tomorrow. All right. But sorry, I'm just thinking that there's been so much invested in this that what would you say the likelihood of Bitcoin going from $100,000 a coin to zero? What do you think the likelihood of that
zero?
To zero.
Do you know what? Well, I would give it 10%, but that is still double digits.
Okay. So unlikely. So you reckon 90% is going to hold its value to a certain extent?
Generally, I think it'll hold its value.
Generally in the markets, okay, the worst crash ever in the history of man, the value went down something like 40%. I think that was the Black Monday going back to 1930 or 1928 or whatever it was, okay? Generally when the market crashes, and they use all these very violent words to describe it, it's down maybe 15 or 20%. Maybe 30% or something like that. And more experienced people will call that a correction. So the way I look at it is, the way I look at it is, if Bitcoin is worth 100 grand today, all right, and if the worst happens and it dives by 30,000 or even 40,000, it's still worth 60 grand a coin.
It's true.
You know, so that's how I see it. Right. I want to keep the story about the summer reading list, which is just hilarious, for just a few minutes time for the end. NVIDIA's vision of robots. Tell me about that.
Yeah, something very quick. I mean, it was Computex in Taiwan earlier this week where NVIDIA came out and gave their view of where they see computing going. And in particular, they talked about robots and the use of AI. And the argument was that we're going to need 3 computers in order to train and make sure robots are, become self-sufficient, right? So there's the idea of an AI for learning, right? One to simulate the conditions wherein those particular, learnings or that particular data will be, trained, and then one to actually, in the robot itself. So you're basically looking at a cloud system, really. So the interesting thing here is that what do you do if you don't have the training data to start the process with? So they are working with developers on what they're calling synthetic data, right? Basically a best guess of what something is. Now, when you're dealing with robots on an assembly line, it's fairly easy to figure out what, you're going to have to move this to over here, Very easy to input data based on it, create a simulation, and then send that to the robot. So we're not looking at difficult things to do here. We're looking at procedural knowledge. So, the idea of having people effectively make stuff up isn't the worst. If you're looking at something like, reasoning and logic and that kind of thing, like the large language models apparently can deliver now, this is not the solution for you. But I think it's just kind of interesting that we're getting to the stage where we're aware enough about data and the problems it can bring that sometimes it's just easier to, create your own.
All right. Interesting vision. Two political stories out of the States. Elon Musk, I'll let you go first with that. He's gone. Pack your bags, get the hell out of Dodge.
This is a story that I could talk about for hours and hours and hours.
Oh, well, don't.
We are talking about the Department of Government Efficiency, something that started out as a meme on X, the idea of let's get the smartest man in the world to come into government and fix it. Government is full of waste, fraud and abuse. We've got to root it out. Let's do it. Let's get better value for our tax dollars. Musk said, yeah, sure. Why not? Probably not expecting to actually get the gig, seeing as Doge does not exist as a legal entity. But guess what? President Trump liked the idea and he said, yes, come on in. Waste, fraud and abuse. Love it. Let's root this out. And in fairness, if somebody was to say, hey, we've got a problem in the civil service, can you come in and fix it? Smartest man in the world. I think it'd be very hard to turn down that particular offer. However, we know that the idea of Doge wasn't there to root out waste, fraud and abuse. It was there to identify $1 trillion in savings to pay for a tax cut for the rich. That's all it's for. Let's not give it any sort of altruistic
credence.
Credence whatsoever. I mean, things that Musk had talked about by way of rewarding people or talking about there being a Doge dividend where, you would get $5,000 back because this is the amount of money that they were going to say, never going to happen. I mean, that money was, mentally, this is going in my pockets kind of a thing. So what actually happened with Doge? I mean, Musk said he was going to stick around for 5 months. He did. He fulfilled his obligation. Of course, the thing in the background was, but is he really going to be sticking around? Is he going to be the man behind the man kind of a thing? And no, he actually appears to be stepping back. And in an interview, he was talking about his political donations and he said, nope, that's it. I'm done with spending in politics for the moment. Nothing on, I'm going to be supporting MAGA candidates in primaries if it comes down to it. I'm going to start funding MAGA potential justices in state Supreme Courts. Nothing like that, because he had an awful problem with that earlier this year. He pumped $20 million into a Supreme Court race in Wisconsin. I mean, the guy went canvassing. He showed up with a massive bit of cheese on his head. Well, it was a cheese hat on his head. And it was kind of the point at which people discovered that you can't buy democracy We actually quite like our democracy. We know it's not perfect. We know we've got Citizens United. But, you're not going to tell us who to vote for. And having Elon Musk associated with an election has actually become a bit of an anchor around people's necks. So, it turned into, well, you're not voting for them, you're voting for Elon. Do you want to vote for Elon? I don't think so. So we have seen the value of Tesla shares tank. We have seen the man himself getting a little bit combative. He's also lent in on this idea of white genocide in South Africa that Trump this week made a complete idiot of himself over. But with the overall thing about Doge is that it was an abject failure. It was meant to save trillions, minimum 1 trillion. They were talking about 2 trillion. It saved roughly about 9 billion in real terms. And an awful lot of that was winding down USAID. An awful lot of it was winding down grants. And a lot of it was not taking up contracts. So it was very much a case of knowing the price of everything but the value of nothing, because USAID was very good for solidifying soft power for the states around the world. Very much hey, have you heard of America? Well, it's doing this for you. Perhaps you might think against bombing them in the future. Yeah. They're the good guys. And similarly, an awful lot of the grants that they withdrew are actually things that would have been revenue generating. So actually losing the country money. And not to mention the concentration of where some of these cuts are come from. You can go onto the Doge website and you can see what they call the wall of receipts, where it just has, everything that we've cut. And if you have a look at things to do with health and human services, most of it is like, we don't know. We don't know what this is for. Don't know. Just cut it. Don't know. It's a research grant. Don't know what for.
Yeah, I don't think that's it. That's definitely. I mean, Elon, his involvement with Doge, his behavior with Twitter, Tesla kind of going down the toilet at this stage, and driving a Tesla not being a cool thing anymore. Nope. It's all just, and everything that you've said, it's all kind of like it's bad news that's coming out of the States, and Elon seems to be involved with quite a bit of it. However, on the flip side of that, I do have a little bit of good news from Mr. Trump, and actually did something good, and it didn't cost him anything. And
there you go.
It's called the Take It Down Act. So we've had a thing like with the internet where when people break up and stuff like that, if they want to get back at their partner, they will post sex pictures that they took of their most intimate moments, or nude pictures or whatever, and they will put them up online and stuff like that, to the deep embarrassment of the person featured in the picture. And now, of course, with AI, then we've got the whole deepfakes thing where they're taking the body of one person, putting the head of another on it. It's just crazy. So the Takedown Act has been come into effect, which will ban both of those practices. Social networks will have 48 hours to remove pictures if somebody makes a complaint. And Trump himself, this made me laugh. What a guy. He says, I'm going to use that bill for myself because nobody gets treated worse than I do online. Nobody.
Oh, for God's sake. Now, listen, this is not revolutionary. We have this over here and have had it for ages. Yeah. So this is just the States playing catch up. But yeah, I do find it hilarious that Trump's, victim mentality has managed to inform this decision.
Funny. But at least that's a good move stateside. Final story for this week, and this is brilliant. The Chicago Sun-Times, which is one of the leading newspapers in the world, they were doing a feature, as we would often see in the Sunday Independent or the Sunday Times or whatever. It'd be a summer reading list, including a new book from Andy Weir, who wrote the Martian. All right. His new book is called The Last Algorithm. Wow, what a great title. I want to read that book. Now, there is a problem with the summer reading list. What is it?
Yeah, spare a thought for Marco Buscaglia. That's his name, Buscaglia.
The journalist.
The journalist. Therefore, the grace of God go I. Well, not really, because I don't like using AI. I don't use it. Okay, so he was tasked with coming up with the summer reading list. I think it was 15 books. He got a list of It's 15. He published it. I think to make this even worse, it wasn't just a news story. It was a piece of what they call advertorial, which is, paid content that's been written on behalf of someone, I think. But actually, it wasn't. No, I'm just having a look at the article here itself, and it's not labeled as such. So we'll not worry about that. But yeah, he basically put into AI, give me 15 books, and unfortunately, 10 of them real authors, not real books.
So basically, the AI found 10 real authors and then made up 10 titles of books.
So
you're telling me that The Last Algorithm by Andy Weir doesn't exist?
Well, no. I mean, 15 books, 10 of them were fake, 5 of them were real, right? So I don't know what the AI was doing. Maybe it was like constructing possible book titles.
Yeah.
Based on things published by these writers in the past. I don't know.
Yeah, I had that this week with AI as well. We were just kind of summarizing a program that we'd recorded, and in the podcast, we mentioned a book by an author and what it was about. And the AI came back and said that the author of the book was the actual guest in the program. I was like, I mean, this is why we check things, but I just thought it was funny. It's like how it goes. Anyway, listen, there we go. That is the news for this week. Niall, as always, thanks for keeping us up to date.
Delivering Irish tech news since 2006. This is Tech Radio.
The EU AI Act is here to protect us, consumers, from the worst excesses of artificial intelligence. That includes everything from having our likeness used to create deep fakes to making sure that large language models are trained on data freely given for the purpose. The Act also covers what happens when companies turn from consumers to developers of AI if they want to use their own data. To find out more about all of this and how to stay on the right side of the law, Niall Kitson had a chat during the week with an expert in the area, Barry Scannell, who is partner in the technology group of law firm William Fry.
Barry, in looking at the EU AI Act, there's 2 main pillars to it from how I see it anyway. One is trust and the other is risk. Is that still the case, or is it a bit more complicated than that?
I think when it comes to the AI Act, certainly it has a role in helping build trust. But I think that the focus at the moment is on the risk-based approach that the AI Act takes. So when it comes to the AI Act, you're basically looking at it from the perspective of risks that are deemed to be unacceptable, which would be prohibited under the AI Act and have been prohibited under the AI Act since the 2nd of February. And there are things like AI systems that can recognize emotion in the education setting or in an employment setting, or AI that uses deceptive techniques to manipulate people to get them to act against their interests. And then the next tier of risk in the AI Act is called high risk. Now, the rules in relation to high-risk AI aren't actually enforced yet. They're not going to be enforced until not this summer, but the summer after. And these are AI systems that, for example, they would be in relation to AI used in HR. So if AI is used in performance monitoring or in the recruitment process, that's considered high-risk AI, or AI used for access to essential private services. So you're talking about maybe AI being used in determining whether or not someone should have life insurance. That would be considered high risk. Then the next tier of risk in the AI Act is what's called limited risk. And these rules generally relate to transparency provisions and general purpose AI models. So when it comes to transparency, there's an obligation to label synthetic AI generated content as being, AI content. So it doesn't fool people unless it's totally obvious that somebody's interacting with an AI, and also rules around deepfakes and watermarking deepfakes. there's also rules on general purpose AI systems. So when we talk about general purpose AI systems, these are the really powerful AI models, like ChatGPT from OpenAI, like Claude from Anthropic. And these are subject to special rules in relation to things like copyright, for example, and how the AI models have been trained, and ensuring that they're trained in a safe and responsible manner.
I think that issue of training AI models is particularly interesting because not all AI models are created alike. And we are at a stage where a company might start with one sort of data set and decide that, well, look, we're looking for a bespoke AI solution. Maybe we should start incorporating our own internal data to that. So does that change the picture when it comes to companies having to become compliant with the AI Act? Do they sort of move from being consumers to creators of AI? And does that bring with it additional responsibilities?
Yeah, one of the trickiest parts of AI Act compliance is that determination of whether an organization is a provider or a deployer under the AI Act. So it's quite like the discussions and the headaches and heartaches that organizations had when the GDPR was coming in, when they were trying to determine, are they a controller, are they a processor, are they a joint controller? Well, now we're having history repeat itself with the AI Act in terms of providers and deployers. When it comes to a provider, generally speaking, a provider under the AI Act is an organization that develops an AI system, so the AI developer. But there are ways in which that deployers, i.e. users of AI, can become a provider. So, for example, if you're a company and you have a third-party AI developer make an AI system for you, if you make that available on the EU market under your logo or trademark, then you're considered the provider, even though you're not the company that actually developed it. If you're placing it on the market under your name or trademark, then that would make you the provider, for example. Also, if you're using an AI system, a general purpose AI system, say, and it's not high risk, but if your use of that system as a user, as a deployer, changes the intended use of that AI system and makes it a high risk AI system, then that would make you a provider of that new high risk AI system that you've created by going against what its intended purpose was. So, generally speaking, when it comes to deployers, the deployer under the AI Act is simply a user. And by and large, the obligations for users of AI systems are somewhat limited. So, I think a lot of it, when it comes to high risk AI systems, that's where the majority of the obligations are for deployers of high risk AI, of AI under the AI Act, and it comes around again record keeping and things like that to ensure that there's proper records and transparency when using these systems.
Let's look at some of the practicalities there for any company looking to become compliant with the AI Act. I mean, we can assume that large organizations already have, counsel in place to look after this kind of thing. But what about SMEs that perhaps even aren't aware of the extent to which their staff is using AI?
Yeah, like we at the AI conference, there was at the William Fry AI Summit, there was a really interesting quote that the world is divided into organizations which knows that their developers are using AI and organizations which don't realize that their developers are using AI. So this whole concept is called shadow AI. The thing is that the technology is just so good and so useful and so efficient that if organizations don't provide AI systems to their employees to use and don't make AI available to use to their employees will find workarounds, and they might use AI on their phones. And you don't want that as an organization, because these generally would be, in terms of shadow AI use for employees, would be the free to use versions of AI, which allow the AI companies to train their AI systems on whatever inputs you put in, and you don't have the same guarantees around confidentiality and data protection and so on that you would for enterprise grade versions of the model. So like there's different protections there for like GPT Enterprise than there would be for the free version of ChatGPT potentially. So these are things that you'd need to consider as well. And I think, this was borne out if you look at the quote unquote early days of AI, the AI explosion. There was this issue with Samsung that it was discovered that their employees were putting commercially sensitive information into free use AI systems, which caused difficulty because the question was, well, like, was that commercially sensitive information now out there in the ether? So I think that concept is difficult, and having a proper AI policy in place and proper AI training in place is vital for organizations to ensure that their employees use AI responsibly. And an alarming statistic that we discovered in our polling at the William Fry AI Summit this week was that 48% of organizations in Ireland do not have an AI literacy program in place. Now, the thing is that the AI Act says, and this has been the law since the 2nd of February, that any organization that uses AI or develops AI needs to have needs to ensure a sufficient level of AI literacy amongst its staff. And it is alarming that half of organizations using AI don't have that AI literacy program in place. Because, look, leaving aside the fact it's a legal requirement, I think it's a business imperative now, because not only do you need to be able to convey the risks of AI to employees, but you also need to explain to your employees how to use the technology in the best way to get the most out of it. Because, again, there is no disputing how useful a product it is. And as we heard at the William Fry AI Summit, we're only in the beginning stages of AI. Like, this is really, really primitive stuff. Like when we look back into 1980s at their giant brick mobile phones and a laptop that they'd have to carry around in 2 briefcases, that's what we're going to look back at the current AI like. What's coming down the tracks is where it really kicks off with what's called agentic AI. But the thing is that if you as a company don't have the protocols and procedures and literacy programs and so on in place for what we have now, you're not going to be at the races for what's coming next. And I think that's the really important thing.
I think that's a fascinating point on literacy in particular, because we've just seen Google release a version of Gemini for school kids. And I think it's as much about getting kids familiar with and comfortable with the technology than actually coming up with, say, the right answers as such, much in the way that with a scientific calculator, it's as much about figuring out sort of how to derive a formula based on the smart key as opposed to calculating it yourself. Do you think this is kind of the approach businesses should be taking as well, that it's not necessarily about the answer, it's about being able to think sequentially to actually come up with something that is useful?
100%. And I think, we've seen in the United States, we've seen in China that artificial intelligence is now part of the education curriculum. I think it's really important that Ireland follows suit and that we start teaching AI in school. And I think when we teach it, it's not just artificial intelligence you're teaching, but it's also how to use it. Because I think in future roles won't be so much about doing the work, but rather coordinating the work. And it's understanding that will be important. Using your critical reasoning skills, your logic skills, like that aspect of your intellect will be the economically valuable aspect of humans in the workforce in the future. So, something I've been very fortunate. I've given the closing lecture in a few different law schools for different modules as the year comes to a close in the universities. And something I've been talking about is that concept, and like what universities I think ought to be considering. Because like if you consider when a university sets an essay for students, What's the purpose of the essay? Well, it's first of all, it's to show that the student knows the topic, but also it's to help the student learn through that research and learning by osmosis. But now you have AI systems which can get a very decent grade, can get a B or a C grade, like at the very least a 2-2, probably a 2-1 grade, if you're using something like OpenAI's deep research. So what's the point, of setting essays if an AI can do it? And I think the really important thing, and I think we're going to start seeing different ways of learning and assessment, is it should be about, well, use an AI to write the essay, but identify what changes you made and like your level of discernment and your level of critical thinking. Why did you use certain sections but not others? Why did you rely on certain sources but not others? How did you verify? How did you, decide, catch hallucinations? So I think, when you consider this as well, is that if universities are saying to their students, you're not allowed to use AI, and then when those students become graduates and they're going into a workforce where not only are they expected to use AI, but they're expected to be good at it, and they're going to be competing for graduate placement programs against people who are good at it, I think, you're potentially doing a disservice to people in not teaching AI. And this isn't something that's going to happen. This is something that's actively happening now in hiring processes, and it's just the pace of change has been really shocking.
That pace of change, we always see this sort of schism between how things are handled in America with the move fast and break things ideology versus what we have in Europe, where we're much more pro-consumer and pro-rights. How do you see the debate about AI and debate about its regulation progressing? Are we going to start seeing America cherry pick little bits of the AI Act, very similar to how states have done with GDPR? Or are we going to see just a total schism and sort of both sides going in completely different directions?
I don't think it's a case of that we're going to see it. I think it started in January. Like, we are in the schism. We are in the valley. It is already happening. The US has already very clearly shown that they're not going down the AI safety route. And, one of the first things that President Trump did when he took office was undo Joe Biden's executive order on AI safety in terms of federal AI use. I think as well the launch of the Stargate project in the United States, which hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars being pumped into AI research, I think it's indicative of a certain direction of travel, and that is that AI is about to become a national security issue. And I think that'll happen in the next 2 or 3 years. But if you consider companies like SpaceX, they deal with rocket technology and these specific dual use technologies. The thing about rockets is that, sure, they can send you into space, but they can also be used to launch an intercontinental nuclear warhead. And there's really stringent rules around those types of companies. Like, you might have to be an American citizen. And if you're not, there's a million different hoops you have to jump through to be able to work for a company like that. So I think AI might start heading down that route. And if it is a national security issue, and if it is a political imperative for countries like the United States to be the first to develop AGI, artificial general intelligence, like AI that's capable of doing anything that a human's able to do, then I absolutely, particularly under the current regime in America, do not see the United States doing anything remotely to slow down the rate of AI progress. In fact, I would see every measure possible being taken to undo whatever regulations could potentially delay AI development in the United States. And in Europe, we were just not in that ball game at all. And I think we're not playing that game. And it remains to be seen how much that hampers Europe economically and geopolitically.
Let's have a look then towards the east and the other big player in AI at the moment, of course, which is China. About 6 months ago, we saw the first version of DeepSeek, or one of them anyway, and it seems to have been a game changer, both in terms of what it's using, but also what it is using in terms of hardware. Do you see a time when we will be getting AIs delivered through what we would consider now bare bones hardware, where somebody could potentially have their own AI running at home with a couple of graphics cards and a couple of hard drives?
There are models out there that you could run on a standard laptop, and they're open source models. I think maybe even some of the smaller meta models are capable of it. And Apple have been doing a lot of research into what's called on-device models. So these really small AI models. But in terms of anybody being able to develop an AI, the general purpose AI system, or a really powerful one, and when we talk about really powerful AI systems, we're talking about around 1 billion parameters, which, 1 billion, I guess, if you think of neurons in the brain, with huge amounts of compute required. And I think for a general purpose AI system, the AI office in the EU is taking the approach that anything that takes at least 10 to the power of 22 flops or floating point operations will be a general purpose AI, but that's still a phenomenal amount of compute power. And, you're talking about the equivalent of thousands of homes worth of electricity over the course of the year still. So I don't think, while I think that DeepSeek was really interesting and has really shaken up the AI market in showing that you can carry out AI training a lot easier, I don't think we're going to see a prevalence of just anybody creating powerful AI models just yet. And I think the big concern globally is that actually the ability to create the most powerful AI is going to rest in 5 or 6 companies around the world. And as AI becomes more and more powerful and more important to the world, those 5 or 6 companies are going to eclipse current tech companies in terms of their wealth and power.
And that was Niall Kitson chatting with Barry Scannell from William Fry.
This is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
That's it for our show this week. Do check out some of the other stories that we couldn't squeeze into the podcast, but are there in detail online. What have we got, Niall?
Yeah, we have all the winners from this year's Tech Excellence Awards. We're looking at what mixed reality can do to help drive blood donations, and why AWS wants Britain to invest in nuclear power.
You'll find all of those stories and more online at techcentral.ie. We're back again next Friday with a brand new show online and, of course, with RT Radio 1 Extra. In the meantime, please do share our podcast with a friend if they're into tech or gadgets and what's going on online. Just tell them to look up Tech Radio Ireland on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever they get their podcasts. Until next time, from myself, Dusty Rhodes, and from Niall Kitson, have a great weekend.
Remember, you can get the latest Irish tech news with hourly updates, daily newsletters, and more at our website, techcentral.ie. Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland, or listen with RTE Radio 1 Extra. Tech Radio is produced by dustpod.io for techcentral.ie. From me, Artemis, live long and prosper.